Hello, my lovable students. Week 15. Week 15 is actually a big one because we're going to go over AngularJS. So I'm sure you guys have heard this a lot. What is Angular? Angular is a JavaScript framework. It was released in 2010, and Google bought it, and now they're the ones that primarily maintain it. So AngularJS is kind of like Google's framework that they use, and then you're going to hear React.js, and that's essentially Facebook's framework. Angular uses an MVC, which is Model View Controller. And we're going to basically do a breakdown in this video, just a quick intro on some of the different things that you can do with that. So the model is essentially what binds data. The view is the visual representation of that. And then the controller is essentially where your data is going to be stored. So like in JavaScript, if you guys had like an array of objects or anything like that, that's essentially where your data is going to go in the controller. So the more you get into it and the more you get comfortable using it, it actually makes your life super easy. It's just a matter of like learning the syntax. So the first thing that you guys are going to see is that my script tag is in my head and not above my closing body tag. The reason that is because I'll have visible Angular tags if it's not in my head. And since we don't want that, I put it in my head. It automatically starts, Angular automatically starts when you include the script tag. So we can actually just jump right in, and I can, as I'm coding this stuff out, I'll be explaining it. So the first thing that I'm going to do is create a div, and I'm going to say ng app. Next thing, I'm going to create a p tag. Inside of this, I'm going to say name, and then I'm actually going to create an input tag, so type text. And then over here, I'm going to connect the model. So I'll say model name. Now, beneath that, I'm going to have an h1, and I'll say hello, with two curly braces, name, and there we go. So ng app, normally this is going to be an external place, and you would need to put something in quotes, but we can go over that in a second. Right here, I have input type text, ng model. The ng model is essentially going to bind whatever the user types in immediately and display it in the form of an h1 using these expressions. So let's open it up and take a look. So now when I start typing, it automatically updates. So that's one of the benefits of two-way binding, is that if a change is made to the model, then it updates the view, and vice versa. Pretty sweet. So that's one of the things that you can do with it. That's pretty useful. The next thing that we need to go over is actually how to connect the app. So if you guys notice right now, I have a div with ng app, right? You can actually, so what ng app is doing, this is defining the scope of what Angular is going to affect. Right now I have it in a div, so it's only affecting this div. But if I want, I can have it affect everything. So you're more than likely going to see it either attached to the body or honestly up here to the HTML, because if it's a full Angular app, it's definitely going to be attached up here. And basically what we just did was we made some directives and it made stuff happen. So Angular has all this stuff built in, and rather than you having to go around and like code all this stuff out, it automatically does it for you just by attaching an attribute. So once you get familiar with the syntax, it's like going to make your life a lot easier. So the next thing that we're going to do is I'm actually going to connect ng app, but I'm not going to do it the way that we just did it. We're going to create a new file right here in my JS folder, and I'm going to save it as app.js. Cool, so now I have app.js right here, right? After that, I'm going to say variable app equals angular.module. Then I'm going to say my app. You guys are probably also going to see a lot of times the same thing, but without the variable. That's called setter syntax. And basically, I think when Angular came out, they didn't have a lot of documentation on it. So that's the way that everybody is adopted this way. Yeah. So now, whatever I type in this quote, that's the name of my app. I call it my app because I'm just showing you guys whatever right now. But if you had a different name for an app, you can call it that. So now we need to attach that to whatever we want it to affect. I'm going to go ahead and attach it to the body. I'll say ng app equals my app. Cool. So now Angular is going to be applied to everything inside of the body. That's what's going on. And then lastly, we need to link what we just had. So I'm going to say source.js / app.js. Cool. So now we have it linked up, and the scope of it of our Angular app is going to be the entire body. The next thing that we need to do, we're going to set up a controllers folder. So if you come into your JS, and you can just say controllers, like controller, and then inside of that, we're going to create a new file. The reason why we have a folder for controllers is because you're probably going to have more than one controller. So then we're going to do that, and then we're going to save this as mycontrol.js. Cool. So let's take a look at what we have. Variable app equals Angular module, which is connected to our HTML, and then we have a controllers folder with a controller file. Now inside of the controller file, I'm going to say app.controller. The same way that we did for my app, I'm going to do that. Say my controller because that's what I'm going to be able to attach it to. And then I'll say function scope. And then in here, code this out real quick for you guys. Cool. So if you guys notice what this looks like, what does that look familiar to? It kind of looks like a variable, right? If we were to just make a variable in JavaScript, and we made that variable an object, that's essentially what this is doing. So it says scope.name. So name is essentially the name of my variable, and my variable type is an object, and then these are my properties. So my first property is first, and then this is what it's equal to, and then last, and then, yeah. So now I can essentially access this data from the controller. Obviously, we also have to connect the controllers page, or the controllers, right? So here we're going to say script source equals JS / controllers / mycontrol.js. Cool. So it looks like everything's linked up, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and create a div. Ng controller equals what I called it, right? What I named it. So I'm going to go ahead and enter multi-view just so that we can see you guys can see what's going on. So now this controller and this data, I have access to that, and it's attached to this div. And I'm going to create an h1 and create an expression, and I'm going to say name.first. And then name.last. Cool. So let's take a look and see if this is working. There's my name, there's the data, we got it, we accessed it. Cool. So just as a review, let's see what we did. We created the ng app, and this is what's linking Angular. and defining the scope of what Angular is going to be affecting. We created a controller page, or a controller file, and then we entered some data in here, and then we referenced it using an expression. So that's just a quick breakdown and a quick intro. In the next video, we're going to talk about some more stuff that you can do with Angular.